Have you ever screamed in silence, your heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, and the only questioning in your mind was, why, God, why did you let this happen? Do you find yourself sinking in that abyss of despair, where faith seems like a sweet lie and reality is a harsh slap in the face, a betrayal from the very being you've always trusted and relied upon? Have you ever felt your breath catch, not from a lack of air, but from the crushing weight of a pain so immense, an invisible boulder pressing down on your chest, making every heartbeat a reminder of loss, of utter meaninglessness? When you look around, the world continues its relentless spin, laughter still rings out somewhere, the sun still rises and sets, but your inner world has completely collapsed, leaving only a bleak gray, a terrifying emptiness, and in that chilling silence, God's voice seems to have vanished, leaving you alone with unanswered questions, a wound that won't stop bleeding. I remember that fateful day so vividly, the day my sky didn't just turn gray but truly caved in, not a single ray of hope, however faint, could penetrate the thick, dark clouds engulfing my soul. It was the moment I received the devastating news that even now, every time I recall it, my chest tightens as if someone is squeezing the life out of me. I stood there, in a familiar room, yet everything suddenly felt alien, cold. I tried to pray, my lips mumbled familiar prayers from childhood, but they were like meaningless, lost sounds, unable to reach him. I screamed inwardly, no, I actually screamed, with all the remaining strength of a broken heart, God, why me? Why my family? Why would you allow this tragedy to happen when I've always tried to live according to your teachings, when I've placed my complete trust in your mercy and power? My cries then, did they reach his throne, or did they just dissolve into the void, like a mournful echo of despair? Do you understand that feeling, that sense of being betrayed by your deepest beliefs, the feeling that you're just a puppet in a tragic play he's directing, and he's silently observing your pain from some distant place, without a shred of compassion? The nights that followed became an endless series of silent tears, of heartbreaking sighs, of relentless questions drilling into my mind, eroding what little strength I had left. I flipped through the familiar pages of the Bible, the promises of peace, of his care and protection, of him wiping away every tear, but those words, instead of bringing comfort, were like sharp knives cutting deeper into my open wound. They seemed to mock my pain, because the reality I was experiencing was the complete opposite of what was written. How can there be peace when your world has just shattered into 100 pieces? How can you feel cared for when you're flailing in a sea of suffering with no hand reaching out to save you? Have you ever experienced this, when the Bible verses that were once your life source, your guiding compass, suddenly become alien, even bitter and full of irony? When people around you, with good intentions but perhaps a lack of sensitivity, tell you God has a plan or everything happens for a reason, do you feel an urge to scream that that plan, that reason, is killing you day by day, that they can't possibly understand the abyss you're sinking into? I was like that. I once wanted to slam the Bible shut, to cover my ears to hollow condolences, to run away from everything related to faith, because faith at that time was no longer a support, but a burden, a lie. Loneliness in faith is even more terrifying than loneliness in life. You feel lost in your community, where you should have found empathy and support, but instead, you feel judged, or worse, abandoned in your own pain because no one truly understands, or no one dares to touch a pain so immense. And then, amidst those seemingly endless months, amidst the storm of emotions and extreme doubt, something began to change. Not a clear answer to the why question that I still agonized over every night, but a gentle, almost imperceptible shift in my very perception of that question, of that pain, and of the very God I was questioning. A truth began to seep into my mind, not like a blinding light instantly dispelling the darkness, but like a small candle lit in the dead of night, faint but enough for me to see something other than my own despair. Could it be, my friend, that we, with our finite minds and limited vision, are trying to use earthly measures to gauge a grand, infinite plan of the Creator? Could it be that we are demanding He explain Himself according to our logic, when the truth is, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, as He declared through the prophet Isaiah? I began to reflect on the story of Job, a righteous man who endured unimaginable loss and suffering, who also questioned God in his agony. And God answered Job, not by explaining why those terrible things happened to him, but by revealing His greatness, power, and infinite wisdom in creating and governing the universe. Was that a hint that there are things beyond our understanding, secrets of the kingdom of heaven that we cannot possibly fathom with our worldly minds? Could it be that trying to find a clear answer to the why question sometimes causes us to miss a deeper message, a more intimate encounter with the very being we are seeking? One shocking thing I gradually realized, an almost paradoxical truth, was that in the very moments I felt most abandoned, most broken, most vulnerable, strangely, he was closer to me than ever. Not a powerful God standing afar, performing miracles to rescue me from suffering dramatically as I had once imagined and hoped, but a God present right in the midst of that pain, weeping with me, feeling my brokenness with me. Can you believe that pain, however brutal and bitter, can become a catalyst, a sacred warning that your faith needs to be purified, deepened, to transcend the easy prayers offered when life is peaceful and rosy? Perhaps these harsh trials are the crucible for refining gold, for removing the impurities of a faith based on blessings, on tangible rewards, so that a more mature faith can emerge, a faith based on his very being, on his unconditional love, regardless of the circumstances. I recall the words of the Apostle Paul, who endured so much hardship, persecution, even facing death, yet he could say, "When I am weak, then I am strong." What does this mean to you? Is it possible that when we are stripped of everything we once relied on, health, money, relationships, even reputation, that is when we have nothing left to cling to but God himself? And in that emptiness, we truly discover an all-sufficient Christ, a supernatural strength we never knew before. It's a shocking discovery because it goes against everything common logic tells us. We often think God is only with us when things are good, when prayers are answered according to our desires. But no, he is also there, silently and patiently, even when we turn our backs on him, when we doubt him, when we are angry with him. He is not a God who only punishes or demands, but a merciful Father waiting for his prodigal child to return, even when that child is denying his existence. This truth, when it sinks in, brings a strange liberation. It doesn't make the pain disappear instantly, but it changes the way we view that pain. Pain is no longer a sign of God's punishment or abandonment, but perhaps an invitation, an opportunity for us to experience a new depth in our relationship with him, an intimacy we might never have achieved if life had remained smooth and easy. Do you dare to look at your pain differently? Instead of just seeing loss and bitterness, can you find a hidden pearl of great price, a profound spiritual lesson God wants you to discover? This is not passive acceptance, a negative resignation that fate has decreed, but a courageous and active act of faith, choosing to trust in his unchanging love, in his goodness, even when your reason cannot explain what is happening, even when your heart is still bleeding. It's the decision to look beyond the immediate circumstances, to look up to the one who promised, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." Do you dare to walk on the waters of uncertainty, amidst life's storms, holding only his invisible yet powerful hand? It's a great challenge because our natural instinct is to want to control, to understand everything, to have a clear roadmap. But faith, by definition, is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. It requires us to relinquish the need to understand everything, and instead, learn to trust the one who understands everything. Remember Abraham, who is called the father of faith. He obeyed God and left his homeland to go to a place he did not know beforehand. He believed God's promise of descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore, even when he and his wife were old and beyond childbearing age. He was even willing to offer Isaac, his only son of promise, as a burnt offering, because he believed God had the power to raise the dead. Abraham's faith was not based on what he saw or understood, but on absolute trust in God's character and promises. Or like Daniel's three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when faced with the fiery furnace, they bravely declared that the God they served was able to deliver them, but if not, they still would not worship the king's golden image. But if not, those three short words contain extraordinary faith, a complete surrender to God's sovereign will, even if that will might not be what they expected. It's a peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that doesn't come from changed circumstances, but from knowing you are in the hands of a loving and almighty God, one who has a good plan for you, even if that plan includes painful paths you cannot comprehend. Do you long for that peace? A peace that doesn't depend on whether your why question is answered, but on whether you trust in the one who is the answer to all of life's problems? There's another wondrous thing I've experienced, my friend. When we allow God into our pain, he not only heals our own wounds, but he can also turn those very scars into sources of hope and comfort for others in similar situations. Could it be that the tears you've cried, the long nights you've spent awake, the desperate prayers you've offered, are not in vain? Could it be that your very brokenness is God's way of preparing you for a special mission, a deep empathy for other hurting souls, a sensitivity that those who haven't experienced similar pain could never possess? When you've been at the bottom of the abyss, you'll know how to talk to someone who is there. When you've felt abandoned by God, you'll know how to share a fragile hope with someone struggling with their faith. Your scars, instead of being reminders of past pain, can become powerful testimonies to God's healing and restorative power. They are not signs of weakness, but proof of survival, of strength found in weakness, of grace that lifted you up when you had no strength to stand. Have you ever thought that your story, with all its dark and painful chapters, could become a lighthouse guiding ships lost in stormy seas? Your tears today might be words of comfort, of deep understanding for someone tomorrow, helping them realize they are not alone in their battle. This is often how God works. He uses the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He uses the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are. He can turn your pain into purpose, your loss into a message. This doesn't mean we actively seek suffering, but when suffering comes, we can trust that God never wastes a single tear of His children. He can weave a beautiful tapestry from the tangled and broken threads of our lives, if we are willing to place all those fragments into His hands. The journey of confronting the question, why, God, why did you let this happen, is by no means an easy one, and I want to be honest with you. Perhaps that question will never have a complete, clear answer in the way that we, with our human minds, expect. There may always be a degree of mystery we must accept, a certain silence from heaven we must learn to live with. But there is a truth greater than all our persistent questions, a truth as solid as bedrock upon which we can anchor our lives amidst the storms. That is the unwavering presence of a God who loves you unconditionally. A love not based on whether you are worthy or not based on whether you understand everything or not, but simply because you are His child. He is there, even when you don't feel Him. He listens, even when you think your prayers only hit the ceiling. He doesn't promise a life without storms, without trials, without tears, but He promises to be with you in the midst of that storm. He promises to give you the strength to overcome, and He promises that ultimately, He will wipe away every tear from your eyes, and joy will come after the long night of weeping. And that, my friend, may be all we truly need to know, all we truly need to hold on to. Peace doesn't come from having all the answers, but from knowing the one who holds all the answers, and believing that He loves us more than we can possibly imagine. It's a surrender not in defeat, but in deep trust in a larger plan, a greater love. Let Him embrace you in your pain, let Him speak to you in His meaningful silence, and believe that, one day, you will look back and see His hand carefully weaving good even from the most painful fragments of your life. If these heartfelt words have resonated with you, if you too are on a journey of seeking healing, seeking meaning, seeking answers to your own why questions amidst life's trials and losses, I warmly invite you to subscribe to this channel. This isn't just a YouTube channel. I hope it will be a community, a place where we can share together, uplift one another, and seek God's light together in our darkest moments. Because one thing I know for sure is that none of us should have to walk this path of faith alone. We need each other. We need encouragement from those who have walked through the valley of shadows and found hope. Let's explore more about the love and healing that only Jesus can provide, and grow stronger in our faith together, one day at a time.